Welcome to the guide, Exile. As the Atlas basics have been covered, we should now discuss how to go about crafting maps, such that we can move through the tiers effectively and efficiently. For this guide, you want to have an understanding of the Atlas and maps, as well as an understanding of Zana's map device. For that, you can find information in the Atlas Basics Guide. But before we begin, I would just like to remind you that this guide was made in partnership with fellow content creator and Atlas guru,
Karv.
You can find him on Twitch, YouTube, Twitter, and Discord, which I have linked in the video description. Maps like normal base items can be crafted with currency. As such, they can roll a wide swath of affixes that affect the zone and monsters within. There are different tiers of certain affixes depending on the color of the map base. However, we won't concern ourselves so much with the tiers of affixes like with items, but instead look out for good or bad affixes. To start, we should consider the implicits that can be added to maps via affixes, which are item quantity, item rarity, and monster pack size. Using Cartographer's chisels will increase the map's item quantity percentage by a maximum of 20%. Like with other quality enhancing currency, it is recommended to use these when the map item is of normal quality to get a full 5% quality per chisel. The item quantity modifier affects the total amount of items that drop in the map, including other map drops. The item rarity modifier affects the rarity of items that drop, so a higher rarity percentage, the higher percentage of magic, rare, and unique items you will see. Finally, the monster pack size modifier increases the number of monsters that can appear in the zone, which also inherently increases the item quantity of drops as there are more monsters to kill. When crafting maps, you will mainly want to look for combinations of modifiers that provide bonuses to item quantity and monster pack size. It is most important to get pack size on maps as this provides not only more experience, but item quantity of drops, furthering your character and progression. Now it becomes a little bit more complicated in what affixes you should look for when rolling maps for these bonuses, since not all builds can run each map mod. All map affixes have been homogenized to provide quantity, rarity, and pack size. So what I can summarize here are some general good and bad affixes to run or avoid based on their homogenized numbers. There are of course a lot more affixes, and some may be added. These are only just a small subset to give you an idea of what to look for. Of course, you cannot always roll the perfect maps, but keeping an eye out for these modifiers and combinations of them when rolling your maps can result in high quantity and pack size maps. So let's get into crafting these map bases. Before we get into advancing through the tiers of maps, we should see what currencies we will be using to craft maps. For magic map crafting, we will simply use transmute, alteration, and augmentation orbs. These currencies are incredibly common, and all maps should at least be of magic rarity prior to running them. However, it is generally more cost effective to run them as rare rarity maps. For rare map crafting, we will be using alchemy and scouring orbs as our main method for rolling affixes. This combination of alching and scouring to re-roll the map is generally cheaper than using chaos orbs to re-roll them. Cartographer's chisels are highly desired for all red tier map bases, but can be used for yellow tier map bases when pushing into red tier map bases. Everyone's opinion differs on when to be using chisels, but I find it is most useful to use them when progressing into red tier maps and then saving them exclusively for tier 14 plus maps when you are set up. It really comes down to a balance of map price to chisel pricing. Another great currency for adding insane quantity and pack size to your maps are vol orbs. These have the ability to do the following to your map at an equal weighting, with a 25% chance for each outcome. It could have no effect other than adding the corrupted property. It could re-roll the map into a rare map, forcing it rare from any prior rarity with 8 random affixes. It could unidentify the map if it is at or above magic rarity, retaining all of its previous affixes and implicit bonuses. Unidentified magic and rare maps will receive a 30% bonus to item quantity. Unique maps do not receive this. If corrupting a normal rarity map and the unidentified outcome happens, it will only gain the corrupted property. It could re-roll the map into a rare map, forcing it rare from any prior rarity with 4 to 6 random affixes. In this vol outcome, it can also have a 50% chance to +1 the map tier to an appropriate connected map base with 4 to 6 random affixes. This means on average you will get a +1 map tier from a vol orb 12.5% of the time. Corrupted map bosses will also have the chance of dropping sacrifice fragments for the Atziri set and vol skill gems. As with other corrupted items, these maps cannot be altered, but as long as your build can handle almost all the map affixes, vol orbs are almost always a positive in terms of returns. They have a chance to provide further progression in the Atlas, item returns, experience, and of course map returns. As mentioned earlier, if you have vol orbs in the early days of a league, you can always use them on your highest tier of maps for the possibility of getting a +1 to advance your Atlas. Speaking of vol corruptions, you can also add vol sacrifice or mortal fragment pieces to the map device to further quantity bonus to your maps. Vol sacrifice fragments add 5% quantity per unique fragment used, and mortal fragments add 10% quantity per unique fragment used. Unique meaning that it is the only one of that specific fragment used. For example, if you place 2 dusk fragments within the device, only one will be used while the other will remain, only adding 5% quantity rather than 10. These are generally used in red tier maps, but are not the most cost-effective method for adding quantity. Finally, even though this is not really a currency, there are Zana's map device modifiers, which cost currency. These of course do rotate per patch, but for the most part they will be adding more quantity to the map, along with extra monsters for a fair price. These are generally only used in red tier maps. All in all, knowing what currencies to use is very complicated. It's a balancing system of knowing the map's base value versus the currency value used to make the map. These prices will fluctuate greatly through time, so it is impossible to say what is best here or is the most efficient strategy. But from a global viewpoint, it is almost always worth using an alchemy and a vol orb on your maps if your build can handle all of the map modifiers, as this is a very small investment to gain absolutely ridiculous map quantity and pack size. Using other currencies will come at your discretion and further advice for advancing map tiers. Advancing and sustaining map tiers is always a huge point of contention amongst many players. Some are able to advance quickly while others get stuck on a certain tier, and some can sustain the highest tier of map while others struggle to even see one of those tiers. While both situations are heavily dictated by RNG, there are many strategies to make RNG work in your favor by ensuring you have the best roll at the dice possible. The biggest thing to remember before you start mapping is that map returns are very random and will not always be consistent. Even though you may be rolling your maps with a lot of currency or with the perfect affixes, this does not guarantee you a map return. Do not get discouraged in the beginning of your atlas, as it will be slow moving from white to yellow and then into red tier maps. Do not take it wrongly if you have a bad map or two of returns. Just keep running well-rolled maps and you will eventually level out on your luck, believe me. Once you get over each map tier hump, it gets easier and you will soon be able to sustain all map tiers with ease. We already briefly spoke about crafting and advancing through your first maps in the Atlas Basics guide. You will want to be completing these at magic rarity, so you will only need to transmute and augment them to ensure you have a prefix and a suffix. If you cannot run these mods on the map, feel free to use an alteration or two rolling over it. However, I would recommend using alchemy orbs on these maps when possible to bring them to rare rarity, instilling Alch and Go strategy. You will always make back that alchemy orb within the map along with other items, maps, and experience. It is also recommended to be alching your tier 5 plus maps to push into yellow tier maps regardless of your previous crafting methods. For yellow tier map bases, you will always want to be using alchemy orbs to bring these to a rare rarity for both returns and Atlas bonus completion. Once you reach tier 10 maps and gather a small pool of them, say 4 to 5, I would recommend you start using some chisels or val orbs on those. This will help returns to build your tier 10 and 11 map pool to get you into red tier maps. Again, getting through this high tier maps is an arduous process, taking time and effort. Remember that you can always try using vol orbs or throw a few vol fragments in the device, or use Zana's map device modifier. After you have achieved a decent starting pool of red maps, say about 8 to 10, you can stop using chisels completely on any tier 10 maps and move on to running chiseled red maps. For red maps, you must complete these at a rare rarity along with corrupting them for their Atlas bonus. This can be tough to do initially, as corrupting your first few map bases could render them uncompletable for your build. If you do fear this, you can start out by just chiseling, alching, and assessing the map affixes first, considering the item quantity and monster pack size percentage values. In general, you will want to be getting the following on your map's implicits. This may require a bit more currency, but try and make an effort to hit these numbers within a few alchemy and scouring orbs. If you hit more magic or more rare monsters as an affix with around 70% quantity, these are good to run as well. After unlocking the map base, I highly recommend using vol orbs when you can to really juice up your red tier maps for little investment. Remember that you can always use vol fragments and or Zana's map device modifier on a well-rolled map. Now within red tier maps, tier 14 plus will be quite difficult to sustain initially. You will not be regularly getting tier 15 and 16 maps, so worry not if you only see a few here and there. They are not meant to be chained back to back. However, as we will talk about later in the guides, with proper investment and setups, this is possible to sustain. You will for the most part be able to endlessly chain tier 11 through 13 maps, maybe even 14, with a filled out atlas at or above 100% atlas bonus. Finally, there are unique maps which you cannot alter their explicit affixes. The benefits of these maps, other than their possible drops, is that they are considered for atlas completion bonus. You want to try and complete the cheapest variants of these as soon as possible to bolster your atlas completion bonus to help the rest of your map drops, completing the rest of the expensive ones when you can. Aside from map crafting and completion, there are also some other methods for progression and sustain, such as sextants, influence, strongholds, and more. We will be discussing these in the next guide, the Atlas Intermediate Topics. With that, we have now covered the crafting of maps. You should now be able to confidently roll your maps knowing what to look for and how to do it. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one, Exile.